I got one last ride left in me.
Carter Slade.
This old man only appeared for a few minutes, yet he completely overshadowed the protagonist's limelight.
Morning, bonehead.
He is the second Ghost Rider, and Ghost Rider is the most popular character among Marvel's dark superheroes. The Spirit of Vengeance, the Hellfire Chain, and the Penance Stare, each one is a nightmare for enemies. The previous two generations of Ghost Riders have both burned the most heinous criminals to ashes with hellfire. Now it's Johnny's turn, the third Ghost Rider. During his first transformation, his whole body emanates temperatures of thousands of degrees. Every step he takes leaves a burning footprint on the ground. He then has to endure the baptism of hellfire. Every inch of his skin is burned away. One can imagine the immense pain he endures. After Johnny's frantic roar, Ghost Rider finally completes the transformation and becomes a burning skeleton. This is Ghost Rider's ultimate form. At this moment, Blackheart actually shows up at his door and asks in a sarcastic tone,
"Looking for someone?"
Back to hell.
Blackheart didn't care. He sent the Demon of Wind, who trapped Ghost Rider with a single move. The Hellfire also went out. Blackheart smiled triumphantly, thinking he had succeeded. The next second, the Hellfire reignited. The Rider tore off the chain, raised it as his weapon, and strode toward Blackheart. Unexpectedly, when he stepped into a puddle, he was trapped by the Demon of Water beneath his feet and couldn't move. Before he could react, a large truck came speeding over. The driver, who got out of the car, was actually the Demon of Earth.
He ain't so tough.
The Demon of Earth had a "I'm super tough" look on his face, thinking he had defeated Ghost Rider, but after taking just 2 steps, he was grabbed by the shoulder by a skeletal hand. A single punch left the Demon of Earth crippled. He had to quickly beg the Rider for mercy. Naturally, the Rider wouldn't let him off. The Rider channeled Hellfire directly into the chain, then unleashed the Soul Chain to bind the Demon of Earth tightly. The Hellfire spread along the chain. The Demon of Earth, overwhelmed by pain, shouted frantically for help from his teammates, but his teammates had long since fled without a trace. The Demon of Earth begged for mercy but was unsuccessful. He was soon burned to a pile of charcoal. After defeating the enemy, Ghost Rider tossed the chain over his shoulder, whistled, and his war chariot immediately raced over. Coming to a stop obediently in front of him, the Rider infused his own Hellfire into the motorcycle. Tempered by the Hellfire, the vehicle began to burn and transform into Ghost Rider's exclusive mount, the Spirit of Vengeance. Johnny mounted the chariot, officially becoming Ghost Rider, and began patrolling the city. He completely forgot about his date with his girlfriend. Soon, he heard someone calling for help. A gangster was robbing someone at knife point. In the critical moment, the Rider descended from the sky to stop the gangster. He gestured for the girl to leave first. The gangster stared in terror at the flaming skeleton in front of him. The Rider stepped forward and grabbed the gangster, but the guy actually dared to resist and launch a sneak attack. The dagger was instantly melted by the Hellfire. The Rider stared directly into the gangster's eyes, unleashing Ghost Rider's signature move, the Penance Stare. This ability forces evildoers to witness all the evil deeds they have committed in their lives, and their souls have to endure the pain of all their victims. In the end, the gangster's eyes turned into burning coal, and his soul was sent to hell. Having done this, the Rider drove the Spirit of Vengeance, continuing to roam the city's streets and alleys, hunting down evil souls. But as the sun slowly rose, Ghost Rider's power began to fade. The Spirit of Vengeance slowly returned to its original form under the gentle touch of the sun. As the sun shone on him, the Rider felt intense pain, and the Hellfire was extinguished. He transformed back into Johnny. Johnny crawled painfully toward his father's tombstone. Since it was his first transformation and he wasn't yet familiar with the process, he soon fell into a deep sleep from exhaustion. When he woke up again, his mouth was parched and he was extremely thirsty, and there happened to be many glasses of water beside his bed. Without hesitation, he picked up the glasses and drank them frantically, emptying one after another until he quenched his thirst. Later, Johnny walked outside and saw an old man standing by the tombstone. He then learned that it was the cemetery keeper who had taken him in. Johnny quickly thanked him, but the cemetery keeper seemed to know everything about him. He said that everything that had happened the previous night wasn't a dream but reality, and warned Johnny to quickly learn to get used to this change, otherwise, he had a tombstone ready for him right there. Johnny thought the old man was rambling and planned to push his motorcycle and leave, but the cemetery keeper said seriously that if he wanted to survive, he needed his help. Johnny thought to himself, how can this old man boast more than me? So he politely declined his kindness.
They've been coming since you made that deal.
Johnny was intrigued by this statement. He never expected that this seemingly ordinary old man knew more about Ghost Rider than he did himself. The old man offered to stitch up Johnny's wound. He asked Johnny to sterilize the needle with fire, but Johnny couldn't produce any flames, the old man told him it was impossible during the day, he could only transform into Ghost Rider at night. Through the cemetery keeper's narration, Johnny gradually learned about the power he possessed, as well as the intentions of the demon elder in Blackheart. For safety reasons, the cemetery keeper suggested Johnny stay at the graveyard. This place was a sacred ground that could resist the invasion of evil forces, but Johnny, who was born free-spirited, refused to be confined. He was eager to explain to Roxanne why he had stood her up the previous night. At the same time, Blackheart went to Ivory Mountain Cemetery to find the lost contract of San Venganza. The place had changed drastically. What used to be a cemetery had been converted into a factory. Only one security guard was on duty there. After learning that the priest had moved the graves to St. Michael's Church, Blackheart killed the security guard outright. But his reckless killing of innocent people on Earth eventually attracted the attention of the police. Roxanne, as a journalist, arrived at the scene to cover the incident. On his way home, Johnny found that the police had blocked off the entire street. They were investigating the previous night's incident. After transforming into Ghost Rider the night before, Johnny had turned the entire city upside down. Johnny was shocked by the sight. He found Roxanne, who was covering the scene, and wanted to apologize to her, but Roxanne refused outright, saying there was no longer any chance. Johnny's repeated failure to keep their date had left her completely disappointed. Johnny felt wronged and wanted to explain what had happened the night before, but he didn't know how to start, so he had to go back home. Johnny looked in the mirror and admired his 8-pack abs. In the evening, while Johnny was trying to learn how to control the hellfire, Roxanne unexpectedly showed up at his door. She said she was leaving the city and had come to say goodbye to Johnny, but she couldn't help but ask Johnny why he had stood her up again the night before. Johnny stumbled over his words and couldn't speak. Under Roxanne's questioning, he had to tell her the truth. As expected, Roxanne didn't believe Johnny's explanation, that he had been possessed by a demon and thus missed their date. She even thought he was making fun of her. The rekindled romance between them was extinguished just like that. Johnny watched Roxanne leave without trying to stop her. He was afraid that he would bring danger to Roxanne. But shortly after Roxanne left, Johnny was surrounded by 3 police cars. It turned out that they had found Johnny's lost license plate at the crime scene, as well as his tire tracks. They identified him as the culprit behind the series of murders. They took Johnny to an interrogation room for questioning. One played the bad cop, one played the good cop, trying to coerce him into confessing, but Johnny knew that even if he told the truth, no one would believe him. Instead, he might be regarded as a mental patient, so he chose to remain silent. Because Johnny refused to cooperate with the investigation, the police had to lock him up in jail for temporary detention. It was already late at night. Johnny began to feel unwell. The surrounding area was full of heinous criminals. The writer's soul within Johnny began to stir. He begged the prison guards not to lock him up, but his pleas went unanswered. Instead, he was quickly pushed into a cell. All kinds of lawbreakers were gathered here. When they saw the acrobat star Johnny behind bars, they all wanted to pick a fight with him. They provoked him with words and even started attacking him. A young man tried to stop them but was knocked to the ground with one punch. Then they pinned Johnny to the ground and ganged up on him. But at this moment, a burst of energy suddenly erupted. Johnny transformed into Ghost Rider in an instant. The power of hellfire was reactivated. Even fire hoses couldn't put out the flames above his head. Johnny then judged these criminals. No one who was guilty could hope to get out alive. After this whole ordeal, only one young man survived and was acquitted of all charges.
Innocent.
With this power, the writer waved his hand, instantly melting the prison bars, and his spirit of vengeance sensed the call. Darting out of the parking lot in a flash, the writer walked swaggeringly out of the police station, and the spirit of vengeance was already waiting at the entrance. Just as the writer was about to get on the bike and leave in style, a police officer chased after him and swung a baton, dislocating the writer's jaw. But the writer didn't get angry. Instead, he calmly reset his jaw, and judged the officer innocent. As Ghost Rider, he emphasized that he only punished the guilty and wouldn't harm the innocent. With that, he mounted the chariot and raced away. His control over his powers had improved this time. No deep burn marks were left on the ground behind him. At the same time, the police launched a full-scale operation to capture Ghost Rider, quickly cornering him on a bridge, trapped on all sides. With helicopters hovering above, the writer resolutely turned around and plunged into the river. Watching the river water gradually boil, the police raised their guns and stood on high alert. After a while, the flames on the writer's body were not extinguished by the water. Instead, he emerged from the water and quickly escaped the encirclement. The sheriff envied this amphibious motorcycle, and at the same time realized Ghost Rider's extraordinary strength. Following the Sin navigation, the writer raced straight toward Blackheart. The 3 demons heard the roar of the spirit of vengeance and knew they couldn't escape. Blackheart sent the demon of wind to hold him off. Before the writer could react, he was ambushed by the demon of wind. In the blink of an eye, the demon of wind flew into the air again, taunting the writer with his aerial advantage, drawing all his anger. How could the writer stand this? He chased after the demon on his motorcycle. The demon of wind didn't back down and flew straight to the rooftop. but a mere building couldn't stop the rider. He lifted the motorcycle's front wheel and drove vertically up the building from the ground, racing up the building's exterior glass toward the rooftop. At this moment, a window washer turned around.
Oh my god.
As soon as the rider reached the rooftop, a helicopter tried to get involved. The rider immediately threw his chain and wrapped it around the helicopter's frame. No matter how hard the pilot tried, he couldn't stop being pulled closer by Dany.
You're pissing me off. Okay, sorry.
Seeing that the pilot knew he was wrong, the rider decided to let him go. With a slight exertion of strength, he threw the plane far away. Then the demon of wind appeared. He invited the rider to join them in searching for the contract. The rider didn't fall for it and grabbed the demon of wind. Just as he was about to activate the penance stare to finish him off, the demon of wind broke free easily. After all, anyone who dared to fight Ghost Rider must have something to rely on. The demon of wind was colorless, formless, and shapeless. All physical attacks were ineffective against him. It's not scary if the enemy is strong. It's scary if they're clever. As soon as the demon of wind finished mocking the rider used the physics knowledge he learned from cartoons to throw his chain, spinning it rapidly in the air to form a high-temperature fire wind vortex. He trapped the demon of wind inside, leaving him nowhere to run. In the end, he burned the demon of wind to ashes with hellfire. With this, Blackheart lost another powerful warrior. At this time, the police had all arrived at the scene. The rider calmly retracted his chain, mounted the spirit of vengeance, and jumped off the tall building. He then threw his chain in the air and hooked it onto the wall, driving vertically down from the tall building to the ground. His movements were smooth and fluid, leaving everyone below dumbfounded. Just as he was about to hit the ground, the rider lifted the front wheel and slammed to a steady stop with a sharp brake. After the smoke cleared, the police officers panicked and raised their guns one after another. The rider scanned the surrounding crowd and suddenly spotted Roxanne in the crowd. He jumped off the bike and walked toward his girlfriend. Seeing is believing, hearing is hearsay. After seeing Ghost Rider with her own eyes, Roxanne finally believed Johnny's previous explanation. The sheriff watched the rider approaching step by step, fearing something bad would happen, and directly ordered to open fire. In an instant, countless bullets poured down, but even after emptying all their bullets, they couldn't make him take a step back. Instead, it aroused his anger. He unleashed hellfire directly, forcing all the police back. The rider mounted the chariot and glanced back at Roxanne affectionately, then crashed through the police cars and drove away. This scene was also seen by Blackheart in the distance. He had already started plotting. The next day, Dany went to see the cemetery keeper again. Since everyone had seen his appearance, he felt a little at a loss. The cemetery keeper was quite calm. He advised Dany not to have too many worries in this line of work, and told him that Blackheart was looking for the contract of San Venganza. It was said that the previous spirit of vengeance, Carter Slade, was sent by Mephisto to the town of San Venganza to collect souls, but because the souls there were too evil, he fled with the contract. His goal was to prevent Mephisto, Blackheart's father, from obtaining the contract. Now no one knew if Carter Slade was still alive. There were also rumors that the contract might have been buried with him, therefore, Blackheart would stop at nothing to get it. So you must stay away from your relatives and family. After learning all this, Dany left. After learning Johnny's identity, Roxanne realized she had misunderstood him before. Besides, he was a superhero. She had no right to be angry with him. After all, superheroes were very charming. Girls swarmed around him. He definitely didn't lack girlfriends, so Roxanne went to Dany to reconcile. But at this moment, Blackheart suddenly appeared and attacked Johnny's friend. When Dany rushed back, he found Roxanne lying on the ground with a pale face. Following the direction she pointed, Blackheart pounced directly on Dany and pinned him against the wall. Dany summoned Hellfire to fight back, and was about to use his powerful penance stare, but Blackheart actually laughed at that moment.
Penance stare doesn't work on me. I have no soul to burn.
Blackheart took the opportunity to grab the rider by the neck and slammed him to the ground. The rider transformed back into his human form on the spot. Blackheart threatened Dany with Roxanne's life, ordering him to go find the cemetery keeper and retrieve the contract of San Venganza. He told Dany to bring the contract to the land of evil to save his girlfriend. Dany had to go to the cemetery to ask the keeper for the contract. Seeing that the cemetery keeper didn't budge, Dany picked up a shovel and decided to dig it up himself. Unexpectedly, he was stopped by the cemetery keeper, who snatched the shovel from him and threw it against a tree. The contract was hidden inside the shovel.
Contract of San Venganza. Hell on earth.
Dany hastily begged the cemetery keeper to give him the contract so he could save his girlfriend. He swore that even though he had sold his soul to hell, his heart would never betray what was right. The cemetery keeper seemed to approve of him and handed over the contract. letting him be the one to end it all. He also said he would give Johnny a ride. Johnny was still confused when the cemetery keeper suddenly whistled. A steed rushed out of the mist in an instant. The cemetery keeper nimbly mounted the horse, put on his hat, and transformed in the blink of an eye. It was only then that Johnny realized the cemetery keeper was the previous Ghost Rider, Carter Slade. At first, Johnny looked down on his predecessor's mount, fearing it couldn't keep up with him, but the next second, the steed also burst into hellfire, transforming into a flaming warhorse. Johnny activated his own hellfire, and the two generations of Ghost Riders rode side by side, racing at lightning speed toward the land of evil. The scene was incredibly spectacular. Everything in their path was reduced to ashes. Even the chameleon that loved to watch the commotion was instantly incinerated. The two soon reached their destination. The old rider warned Johnny to stay in the shadows, otherwise he would transform back to his human form. After handing his shotgun to Johnny, the old rider also reverted to his human form. It turned out his power had been exhausted. This was his last time transforming into Ghost Rider. Johnny would have to face what came next alone. After watching the cemetery keeper leave, Johnny rode alone into the land of evil, but unexpectedly, while passing a puddle, he was suddenly ambushed by the Demon of Water, who dragged him into the water. The Demon of Water was quite proud, thinking he could easily defeat Ghost Rider on his own turf. Little did he know, Johnny suddenly opened his eyes and activated the penance stare, transforming into Ghost Rider in an instant and unleashing hellfire. He burned the Demon of Water to steam on the spot. After defeating the Demon of Water, Johnny continued riding forward. Before long, he saw Blackheart in a desolate church. Johnny took out the contract and told Blackheart to release his girlfriend first. Blackheart pushed Roxanne aside. Johnny approached slowly and held out the contract. But the moment Blackheart grabbed the contract, Johnny suddenly transformed into the rider and launched a sneak attack. The contract fell to the ground during the fight. Blackheart reacted quickly and fought back, sending the rider flying with a single palm strike. As Blackheart was about to pick up the contract, the rider grabbed a handful of hellfire and threw it at him. Unexpectedly, after a moment of pain, Blackheart laughed loudly like a pig. It turned out that due to the Demon of Water's delay, the sky was gradually brightening. The rider's powers would also weaken gradually. Blackheart seized the opportunity and threw him directly into the sunlight. As the sun shone on Ghost Rider, the hellfire was extinguished immediately. Blackheart took the chance to open the contract and began chanting incantations. After the seal was lifted, billions of evil spirits were released. In the blink of an eye, all the evil spirits from the land of evil poured into Blackheart's body. Soon, he transformed into an ultra-powerful demon, embodying countless grievances.
My name is Legion.
Johnny took out the shotgun given to him by the previous rider, firing at Blackheart, but after absorbing the legions of spirits, Blackheart's power had greatly increased. He swatted the shotgun away with a backhand. Johnny was sent flying along with it, not even getting a chance to fight back. Johnny scrambled toward the shadows, knowing only by transforming into Ghost Rider could he have the power to resist. But Blackheart wouldn't give him that chance. He lifted Johnny up as easily as a chick. In the critical moment, Roxanne rushed to the rescue with the shotgun, shooting Blackheart in the head repeatedly. But his head instantly regenerated each time. Roxanne tried to fire another shot, but the gun was out of ammo. Johnny shouted frantically for Roxanne to throw him the shotgun. As Johnny held the shotgun into the shadows, hellfire reignited in his hand. The shotgun transformed into a hell cannon. Even Johnny was shocked by its power, but immediately after, the countless evil spirits gathered again. As Blackheart reverted to his human form, Johnny seemed to have an idea. He stepped into the shadows, transforming into Ghost Rider, grabbed Blackheart, and activated the penance stare once more. In the past, the penance stare had no effect on Blackheart because he had no soul, but now, with countless sinful souls inside him, it gave Johnny the chance to defeat him. This turn of events caught Blackheart completely off guard. The power he had desperately sought had become his fatal flaw. At the same time, he endured the pain of billions of victims. The hellfire burned all the evil spirits, and Blackheart paid a heavy price for his sins. Witnessing Ghost Rider's heroic figure, Roxanne was deeply drawn to him once again. Earlier, Johnny had feared his girlfriend would drift away because he was a monster, but now it seemed she loved him even more. Just as they were about to leave, the demon elder appeared. He said Johnny had fulfilled the deal, and could now redeem himself to become an ordinary person again. He would also take back the power of Ghost Rider. Unexpectedly, Johnny, who had once wanted to be rid of this power, refused the old man this time. He decided to bear the contract, fulfill the duties of an angel in the form of a rider, and punish evildoers on earth in his demonic form. He would stand against the most heinous devils. Because Johnny refused to return the hellfire, he was burdened with an eternal curse that gave him a second personality. Every time the midnight bell echoed through the night sky, the demonic power within him became uncontrollable. He hunted down guilty people everywhere in the dark, sucking away their sinful souls. What was even worse, his consciousness was gradually controlled by desire. Johnny no longer distinguished between minor and major mistakes, even trivially moral acts like illegal video downloads became unforgivable sins, drawing Ghost Rider's pursuit. Many innocent people had their souls sucked dry by him. This tormented Johnny deeply. He struggled between good and evil, on one hand, wanting to use this power to fight true evil, and on the other hand, not wanting to harm innocent people arbitrarily. He tried every means to suppress Ghost Rider's frequent transformations, but each suppression only seemed to nourish and strengthen the Rider. In the end, with no other choice, he chose self-exile and embarked on a lonely path, hiding on the other side of the world to stay away from everything and everyone. Through deliberate control, he hadn't transformed for more than 2 years, but he never gave up searching for a way to break the curse, until one day, a black priest suddenly appeared at his door. He not only knew Johnny's true identity, but also asked him to follow the Rider's inner guidance, find a boy being hunted by demons, and safely send him to the Holy Land. Johnny initially refused, for he only hunted guilty souls and had no obligation to save anyone, but the priest offered a deal. He said he was from an ancient holy sanctuary. If Johnny could complete this mission, the sanctuary could lift the Ghost Rider curse from him, allowing him to return to a normal life. This was a lifesaver for Johnny now, an offer he couldn't refuse. So that night, he took the initiative to awaken the mysterious dark power within him, and embarked on a new journey. As mentioned in the previous installment, Mephisto's son Blackheart descended to Earth, only to be defeated by Ghost Rider's hellfire and sent back to hell. So in this installment, Mephisto intends to descend himself, but no matter how powerful a god or demon is, descending to Earth inevitably subjects them to the constraints of the world's rules, preventing them from exerting their true power. So Mephisto searched through ancient books and found a way. The method of possession: he would find a mortal woman, make her pregnant, and the child would be born with a demonic mark. When the time was right, he would possess the child's body, descending to Earth with full power. But Mephisto has a powerful adversary, the angels. The angelic followers seek to prevent the devil's descent. They found the woman Nadia and her son Dany in advance, taking them to a fortress for protection. To ensure everything goes smoothly, the ancient sanctuary sent the Black Priest. As soon as the priest arrived, Mephisto's minions attacked the fortress. The leader of the group was Kerrigan, a mercenary Mephisto had recruited on Earth. Additionally, Kerrigan and Nadia had a romantic past. Nadia was Kerrigan's ex-girlfriend. So the current situation is, Kerrigan was not only cheated on by Mephisto, but also forced to work for him. He can be called the toughest villain in history. Kerrigan, a former mercenary, possesses immense combat power. He led his men into the fortress and engaged in fierce combat. The priests had no combat ability, so Kerrigan quickly took control of the situation. The Black Priest escorted Nadia and her son in a hasty retreat. Although they escaped temporarily, they would be caught sooner or later. Thus, the sanctuary sent the priest to find Ghost Rider, begging him to protect Dany and his mother from the demon's pursuit. On the run, the mother and son were no pushovers. They resorted to all kinds of tricks to scrape together travel expenses, managing to get by fairly well, but in the end, misfortune still caught up with them. That night, Kerrigan led his men in pursuit by car, forcing the mother and son's car to stop by the roadside. They had finally caught them. Things were not going to end well this time. The devil's only target was Dany, so Nadia's fate didn't matter. This gave Kerrigan the perfect chance to get revenge for being cheated on. Even though he knew it was Mephisto who had betrayed him, he didn't dare to confront Mephisto. He could only take his anger out on Nadia. Just as Kerrigan was about to kill the troublesome woman first, a shrill whistle suddenly pierced the quiet night sky. Immediately after, a flaming chariot came crashing down with a roar. Johnny had endured a lot during his long exile. In the first installment, he still ran on gasoline. Now he was reduced to using diesel. Thick black smoke had blackened his white skull, and even the motorcycle was no longer as sleek as before. The shotgun passed down by the previous Ghost Rider was also lost. Fortunately, his trusty soul chain was still with him. Kerrigan recovered from his shock and ordered his men to open fire, but physical attacks were useless against the Rider. Instead, they were burned to ashes by the chain the Rider threw. The other thugs were instantly frozen with fear. Ghost Rider's power had been suppressed for a long time. Without soul fuel, the hellfire had weakened significantly, leaving the Rider so hungry that he was a bit dazed. He shook his head repeatedly, not knowing where to start. Suddenly, he turned around sharply, teleporting directly in front of a nearby old man. Kerrigan watched as his men were killed one after another, so he hurried to the trunk and pulled out a grenade launcher. The Rider opened his mouth wide. The old man's evil soul served as the perfect source of energy for him. Under the effect of the penance stare, the old man felt unprecedented pain in an instant, quickly turning into a pile of debris on the ground. Immediately after, Ghost Rider prepared to go on a rampage, unstoppable, but strangely enough, the boy's blood seemed to affect the Rider, causing the dark power within him to weaken uncontrollably. Even a single grenade could break through his defenses. Seeing that the grenade launcher worked, Kerrigan quickly fired another shot. In the violent explosion, the rider lost his combat effectiveness completely. The kidnappers seized the opportunity and hurriedly fled with Dany, leaving Mother Nadia behind, crying in despair. But afterward, Kerrigan felt more and more wronged. Kidnapping a kid should have been an easy task for a mercenary, so why did a flaming skull suddenly appear out of nowhere? Growing more resentful by the minute, Kerrigan quickly called Mephisto to complain, demanding a raise for the mission. He had lost several of his men. Mephisto was also shocked by the news. He didn't expect Johnny, that troublemaker, to be so persistent. He told Kerrigan to hand the phone to the boy, then chanted an incantation over the line. The next second, Dany suddenly raised his head and roared, then fainted. Mephisto told Kerrigan he had just blocked Ghost Rider's ability to track Dany, so they were temporarily safe. When Johnny woke up again, he found himself in a hospital. Although his injuries had healed on their own after last night's fight, the intense pain hadn't gone away. So he grabbed a handful of painkillers and sneaked out of the ward, evading the police's questioning. He intended to leave the hospital quietly, but was stopped by Nadia in the parking lot, who demanded to know who he was. Johnny had to explain his identity and purpose. He and Dany were in the same boat, both targeted by demons. He had come out of hiding to help them, not to side with the devil. He also explained that he would die if he didn't get Dany back. Johnny's sincerity won the woman's trust. It was then that Nadia revealed the hidden truth about Dany. 10 years ago, she had been in a car accident and nearly died. Suddenly, a demon appeared before her, offering to save her life, on the condition that she bear a child for him. That child was Dany. But as the child grew, Nadia had a change of heart. She couldn't bear to offer her own flesh and blood to the devil, so she took her son Dany and went on the run. But she never imagined she would still fall into the devil's clutches. Upon hearing this, Johnny immediately understood. For the devil to walk on earth, he had to possess a human body, but an ordinary mortal body would limit his power, so he decided to cultivate a powerful vessel from scratch, transferring his own soul into it, and Dany was the perfect vessel to hold his soul. Now that he knew the whole story, Johnny decided to help Nadia find the boy. After all, he also needed Dany to lift the curse on him. Johnny used his powers to locate Dany, but his sense was blocked, so finding Dany became a problem. As Kerrigan's ex-girlfriend, Nadia knew some of his connections. They went to an underground fighting ring and held Kerrigan's business partner hostage. He must know where Kerrigan was, but the aura of sin here was extremely intense, causing the dark power within Johnny to stir restlessly again. To avoid losing control, Johnny had to struggle to suppress it. The man was terrified by his manic state, and confessed Kerrigan's whereabouts. After getting the information, Johnny hurried to leave. He could no longer suppress the surging power within him. Even the spirit of vengeance waiting outside was hungry, ready to strike, waiting for Ghost Rider to mount it and judge the sinful souls. Johnny drove the chariot, racing wildly down the road like an untamed wild horse. It wasn't until he reached the outskirts that Johnny dared to fully unleash his power, transforming into Ghost Rider and charging toward Kerrigan's location. Kerrigan was conducting a transaction at a mine he had bought for enhanced rockets, planning to use them against Ghost Rider. But as soon as the transaction was completed, he heard a familiar engine roar. Seeing his enemy, Kerrigan didn't flinch. The grenade launcher had worked last time, giving him great confidence. This time, he was determined to make sure Ghost Rider never returned. The next second, a rocket soared into the sky, heading straight for Ghost Rider. Although the spirit of vengeance was incredibly fast, it was still locked onto by the kidnappers' heat-seeking rockets. Watching the soaring flames, Kerrigan thought he had sent him to his death, but he never expected that this more powerful rocket launcher failed to achieve the desired result. Ghost Rider stood unharmed in front of everyone, but being bombed twice in a row ignited the anger in Ghost Rider's heart. He directly waved his chain, unleashing a flurry of 5 consecutive strikes like lightning. Under his overwhelming power, the kidnappers were all reduced to ashes. He then teleported to a kidnapper, who emptied an entire magazine at him. Ghost Rider only sighed softly, then returned all the melted bullets to him. But at this moment, a stun grenade suddenly exploded at his feet. Ghost Rider was instantly stunned, losing his ability to resist temporarily, but it only lasted a few seconds. The negative effect wore off. Unconvinced, Kerrigan picked up the rocket launcher and prepared to attack again, but the rider's agile movements made it hard for him to aim. The next second, the rider had closed in and pounced directly at Kerrigan, accidentally slamming into the barrel of the gun. Kerrigan frantically pulled the trigger, and the rocket roared, sending Johnny soaring into the sky. The badly injured rider glanced at the distant mining truck and suddenly had an idea. He immediately climbed out of the deep pit and advanced under a hail of enemy gunfire. Although he didn't shed a drop of blood, the rider's flames showed signs of weakening, threatening to go out. Seeing this, Kerrigan thought victory was within reach and told his men to keep shooting, but it was still useless against the rider. He calmly climbed into the mining truck's cab, then channeled the power of his hellfire, instantly transforming the massive mining truck into his own hell chariot. Immediately after, the rider controlled the chariot, swinging its mechanical arms, and began crushing the kidnappers on the ground. Faced with such a massive machine, the kidnappers had no way to fight back and could only wait for death. Under the rampage of hellfire, the huge mechanical gears smashed down on the kidnappers like invincible flaming wheels. Soon, the entire mine became a crematorium. The kidnappers suffered heavy casualties. The arms dealer was also unwilling to give up, carrying a rocket launcher and attempting a final desperate struggle, but the rider didn't give him any chance. The huge flaming wheel crushed him into ashes on the spot. Even Kerrigan was seriously injured by the shockwave and fell to the ground. When he struggled to stand up, he happened to see Nadia rescuing her son Dany. He was about to draw his gun to stop the mother and son from escaping, when Ghost Rider's chain had already wrapped around his ankle. With a strong pull, he dragged Kerrigan to him in an instant and lifted him up, returning his own words to him verbatim.
Does it? It looks like it does.
The rider was about to use the penance stare to punish this heinous evildoer, but suddenly sensed that the mother and son had driven away. He couldn't care less about Kerrigan now, hastily mounting his chariot and chasing after them. But Ghost Rider was a bit out of control at this moment. Unable to distinguish between friend and foe, he pulled Nadia out of the cockpit and grabbed her tightly. To Ghost Rider now, Nadia's soul also exuded an aura of sin, and she would also be judged by hellfire. But just then, Dany spoke up.
Enough! Let her go.
Upon hearing Dany's command, the rider actually let go of his mother. No one expected that. This seemingly weak boy could control the demonic power within the rider. Even the hellfire on the rider gradually died out, turning into a wisp of green smoke. He squatted on the ground in pain. This was the first time Ghost Rider had transformed back into human form at night. The next day, the three checked into a motel to rest briefly. After discussing it, Johnny decided to send Dany to the ancient holy sanctuary as soon as possible, to eliminate the demonic power within him, and thus escape the devil's entanglement. At the same time, Mephisto arrived at the mine to pick up Dany, but only found the dying Kerrigan. After learning that Dany had been taken by Ghost Rider, he revived Kerrigan and granted him true demonic power. But this act also weakened his own power on Earth. Then he lifted the huge boulder with one hand. Kerrigan's face became grotesquely ugly. Mephisto threw a piece of wood at Kerrigan. Unexpectedly, the wood was instantly corroded into dust in Kerrigan's hand. This was a corrosive power that was no less than hellfire. Kerrigan immediately turned his gaze to a nearby firefighter, eager to test how powerful this newly acquired ability was. The next second, the firefighter was pulled into Kerrigan's dark realm. With just a light touch, the firefighter's flesh and blood dissolved in an instant. With this power, Kerrigan finally had the confidence to confront Ghost Rider. Surely capturing Dany would be a piece of cake, but on the way to chasing Johnny and the others, Kerrigan discovered a side effect of this power. Although the corrosive power was powerful, eating became extremely difficult. Any food would rot and spoil before even entering his mouth. Since gaining the corrosive ability, Kerrigan had never had a full meal again. She had to chase the son of the devil on an empty stomach. But Johnny had already met up with the Black Priest along with the mother and son. The danger seemed to have passed. After a long journey, the group finally arrived at an ancient holy sanctuary. Many ascetics gathered here. The leading sage was covered in mysterious scriptures and emanated holy light. He clearly was a formidable figure, leaving Dany in their protection. Johnny finally felt at ease. The priest kept his promise and prepared to lift the curse from Johnny. But before the curse could be lifted, Johnny had questions about the origin of Ghost Rider. The priest had long anticipated Johnny's questioning, and began to tell a long-forgotten history. Ghost Rider was originally an angel sent from heaven to protect humanity, but because he was too kind, he was deceived by Mephisto, the king of hell. He was eventually dragged into hell and fell into darkness. His mission also changed from protecting mortals to punishing sin. Every time he devoured someone's soul, his own heart was also eroded by desire. This turned him from a messenger of justice into a vengeful spirit driven by desire. The angelic soul was no more. For thousands of years, no evil spirit has been able to sense its existence. After learning his true identity, Johnny remained unusually calm. He had already seen through everything, only wishing to live like an ordinary person. Shortly after, the priest led Johnny into the holy temple, preparing to purify the dark power within him with holy light. A beam of holy light shone down from above, instantly dispelling all darkness in the cave. Johnny was bathed in pure light. Although the process was extremely painful, it was truly effective. Johnny repented sincerely from the bottom of his heart. Before long, he felt his connection to Mephisto gradually breaking, and the cursed spirit from hell was extracted. When Johnny woke up again, he felt an unprecedented sense of relief. It seemed the chronic affliction that had plagued him for years was finally cured. He was truly happy, but just as he was sharing this joy, he noticed that Dany and his mother were being held captive by the saints. Even the priest wasn't spared. Johnny tried to stop them, but he was just an ordinary person now and was subdued immediately. It turned out tomorrow was the legendary prophecy day. Mephisto planned to hold a ritual to seize the boy's body. What was even more outrageous, the sage had deceived the Black Priest. Their so-called way to stop Mephisto wasn't to protect Dany, but to kill him outright. Their reasoning was that without a vessel, the devil couldn't descend to Earth. This was their most effective way to stop the devil. Johnny flew into a rage when he heard this and tried to rush to the rescue, but he was powerless to do so. He could only watch as the saints took Dany to the altar, pinning him down on the stone slab, waiting for the judgment of the 40-meter-long sword. Just as the sage raised the long sword to chop off his head, he was suddenly pulled into a dark realm. It was clearly the kidnapper Kerrigan who had tracked them here. The guy moved through the darkness, using dark power to corrode all the believers present one by one, turning them into mummies. The sage angrily swung his sword to fight back, but as soon as the sword touched Kerrigan, it was corroded by that terrifying power. Unwilling to give up, the sage grabbed Kerrigan by the neck with his bare hands. Kerrigan knelt on the ground, struggling and begging for mercy, but it was all an act. The hand choking him was instantly corroded. No one expected that. Even the mysterious sage couldn't resist his corrosive power. Shortly after, Kerrigan pinned the sage to the ground, and with just a light touch, he rapidly corroded the sage's entire body. When the dark realm dissipated, only Kerrigan and Dany remained in the square. Everyone else had turned into mummies. Kerrigan then took Dany to the City of Demons, a place close to hell. After Johnny and the others escaped, they found that mushrooms had already grown on the sage's body. Looking at the scene before them, the priest deduced that Dany had been captured by Mephisto, and that the soul transfer ritual would be held this night. So, the priest took Johnny and Nadia to an armory in the temple, where they chose weapons, preparing for a battle against the devil. Dany was brought before the devil. Mephisto injected him with a potion, knocking him unconscious before preparing to perform the soul transfer ritual. Johnny, Nadia, and the priest arrived at Mephisto's lair with their weapons. Meanwhile, Mephisto's supporters had gathered, preparing to witness the dawn of a new era. As night fell, Dany was escorted to the altar, and the soul transfer ritual officially began. All the demon worshippers stood up, chanting ancient evil incantations in unison. Mephisto and Dany on the altar began to move in sync, swaying to the rhythm. At this moment, Johnny and the other two launched their attack. Nadia stayed on the perimeter with a sniper rifle, taking out the guards one by one, covering Johnny and the Black Priest, as they sneaked into the venue to rescue her son. When Johnny arrived, the pupils of Mephisto and Dany had gradually been filled with darkness, and both were muttering mysterious incantations. Immediately after, the devil's soul began to transfer into Dany's body through the reflection. At this crucial moment, the priest burst in with a gun, and opened fire indiscriminately at the evildoers, successfully interrupting the ritual. Johnny took the opportunity to rush onto the altar and knock Mephisto to the ground, but when he tried to pull Dany away, he found he couldn't get within half a step. Dany had been corrupted by darkness. Staring at Dany's demonized black pupils, Johnny tried to awaken his humanity, but Mephisto, having recovered, suddenly struck with great force and sent Johnny flying. Without the power of hellfire, Johnny was no match for the devil. The priest fired to create chaos, and was fighting fiercely, when Kerrigan suddenly appeared and grabbed his hand, pulling him into the dark realm. The priest's entire body began to gradually corrode into dust, yet he showed no fear. Even before his death, he never abandoned his faith.
I can still see the light!
After dealing with the priest, Kerrigan was extremely arrogant. He grabbed Johnny, planning to kill him too. It seemed all hope was lost, with no chance of turning the tide. At the critical moment, a twist of fate occurred. Johnny awakened Dany's true nature. Because the earlier transfer ritual had been interrupted, Mephisto had only passed on his power to Dany, not his soul. So Dany asked his demon father if he now had the same power, just like inheriting a family business. After getting an affirmative answer, as the son of the devil, he also possessed hellfire, and the power to make a contract with Johnny. Seeing that Johnny was willing to become Ghost Rider again, Dany rushed forward, grabbed Johnny, and infused him with hellfire once more. Afterward, Johnny's skull burst into flames, and he transformed into Ghost Rider again. Seeing the situation turn unfavorable, Mephisto quickly ordered his followers to stop him. While he took the chance to escape with Dany, the rider waved his chain, burning all the surrounding followers to charcoal with a single strike. This time, the hellfire within Ghost Rider was even more powerful. He could even walk in the sunlight, with a single call. The spirit of vengeance roared over and stopped in front of him. He immediately mounted the chariot and chased after them. He quickly caught up with Mephisto's convoy. Ignoring the machine gun and cannon fire, he stood up, jumped onto the military truck, and threw the driver out. He then jumped into the cab, grabbed the steering wheel, and the truck instantly transformed into an even more powerful flame chariot. It rampaged down the highway, easily clearing all obstacles in its path. The enemy continued to bombard the flame chariot, but it had no effect. Instead, the rider accelerated and crashed into them, sending them flying. Dany's mother also joined this devilish chase. At this moment, Kerrigan suddenly jumped onto the window, and with a touch of his finger, the windshield shattered. He punched through the remaining glass. Ghost Rider turned around, saw this, and immediately threw his chain, pulling Kerrigan to him. The two engaged in a final battle on the moving vehicle. At first, they were evenly matched, but with the enhancement of his Dark Realm and corrosive power, even Ghost Rider's hellfire was gradually extinguished by the corrosive power.
I was never afraid of you.
Since ancient times, villains often die from talking too much. It was this provocation that enraged the writer. He burst into flames again and activated the penance stare, beginning to burn Kerrigan's sinful soul. Kerrigan finally felt fear, desperately trying to avoid eye contact, but it was useless. After eliminating all obstacles, Ghost Rider entered his moment of revenge. He recalled the spirit of vengeance, leaped into the air, mounted it, and continued the chase. With no more gunfire to hinder him, Mephisto had nowhere to run. The rider threw his chain, wrapping it around the car's exhaust pipe, then pulled with all his strength. The car lost control, tumbled down the hillside, and flipped over. Watching the devil clinging to life, the rider grabbed him, widened his eyes, and activated the penance stare. Swearing to judge the devil's sinful soul, the devil dared not meet his gaze. At this moment, Mephisto regretted it more than anything, lamenting the stupidest deal he had ever made in his life. But it was already too late. The rider wrapped the chain around Mephisto, violently throwing him into the air, then slamming him down to the ground with all his might. A deep pit leading to hell was smashed into the ground. The chain bound Mephisto and dragged him all the way back to hell, doomed to never rise again. Johnny finally avenged his father's death. Things seemed to be perfectly resolved, but Dany's condition was critical. He was barely breathing and on the verge of death. At the critical moment, Johnny remembered what the Black Priest had said. Ghost Rider was once an angel. If so, he should also possess the power to resurrect. Johnny sensed the power within him, and indeed summoned the blue power of an angel. Johnny had also completed the upgrade from diesel to new energy. He gently touched Dany with the angelic power, and Dany came back to life instantly. With this angelic power, Johnny no longer had to endure the torment of the demon eroding his will. From then on, he transformed into the Angel Rider, a true superhero, protecting the human world. The story ends here. The film's protagonist Johnny is the soul of the series. In the first installment, he became Ghost Rider through a deal with the devil. The core of his character is that of a prisoner forced to bear a curse, the pain of transforming into a skeletal rider at night, the struggle to control his power, and the guilt toward his lover Roxanne, form the tragic foundation of the character. Cage, with his slightly neurotic performance, accurately portrays Johnny's inner conflict between humanity and demonism. When he looks at his burning palm, his eyes show both fear and helplessness. This sense of contradiction elevates Ghost Rider beyond a mere superhero symbol, making him a classic example of a cursed hero. In the second installment, Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance *, Johnny's character undergoes a crucial evolution. He no longer passively endures the curse, but takes the initiative to find a way to break the deal. He even chooses to temporarily embrace the power of Ghost Rider, to protect the innocent boy Dany. At this point, Johnny transforms from a victim of the curse into a wielder of his power, with a more complete character arc. Through his interactions with Dany, the film endows Ghost Rider with a new meaning. The curse is no longer merely a punishment. It can also serve as a weapon to protect others. This deepening of the redemption theme frees the series' characters from the tragic constraints of the first film, adding a sense of heroic responsibility. The most distinctive hallmark of the Ghost Rider series is its unique visual style. Both films are rooted in dark Gothic aesthetics, yet each has its own focus. In the first film, Ghost Rider's debut is a classic moment in cinema history. A burning skull, a flaming Harley-Davidson, fiery trails left on the ground, paired with gloomy rainy nights and dilapidated urban streets, creating a terrifying atmosphere of hell on earth. The second film leans more into gritty violence visually. The director shifts the setting from the city to deserts and ancient Eastern European cities, desolate wastelands, abandoned churches, and eerie catacombs. Infuse the film with a dark western vibe. The special effects for Ghost Rider are also more aggressive. The flaming chain can deform at will, binding enemies and tearing through buildings. When the motorcycle speeds across the desert, the sand and flames blend, creating a striking flamestorm visual. This visual upgrade not only aligns with the intense revenge theme of the second film, but also showcases Ghost Rider's supernatural power to its fullest. Undeniably, the Ghost Rider series has obvious limitations. The plot logic is occasionally disjointed, some villains are underdeveloped, and Cage's slightly neurotic acting style has sparked debate, yet this doesn't prevent the series from being a unique specimen of supernatural action films. Compared to traditional superhero movies, the Ghost Rider series leans more toward dark adult-oriented content. It doesn't shy away from the pain of the curse or the evil of demons, nor does it deliberately glorify the hero's perfection. Instead, through Johnny's struggles and choices, it explores profound themes of human nature and the line between good and evil. The series' unique value also lies in its genre fusion : It seamlessly blends supernatural horror, action-adventure, and gothic aesthetics. It features the visual spectacle of Ghost Rider's flaming effects, the dark narrative of A Deal with the Devil, and the emotional core of heroic self-redemption. This fusion sets the Ghost Rider series apart from numerous superhero films, making it a cult classic that refuses to cater to the mainstream and stays true to itself. In summary, the Ghost Rider series may not be the most perfect superhero franchise, but with Nicolas Cage's distinctive performance, stunning flaming visuals, and profound exploration of human nature, it has constructed a dark universe belonging to Ghost Rider. Johnny's transformation from a prisoner of the deal to a walker of redemption is not only the growth of a character, but also the series' redefinition of heroism. A hero doesn't have to be radiant, they can also be a cursed rider, walking alone in the dark. When Johnny rides his flaming motorcycle and fades into the night, he leaves behind not only the trail of flames, but also an eternal legend about courage, sacrifice, and redemption. And this is the most touching aspect of the Ghost Rider series.